Presentation of the day before our panel discussion later. So Andy Henderson is from Nationwide Building Society, and he's going to talk us through what they've been doing with Nationwide with data visualisation there.
Thank you. I haven't got mics up, so hopefully you can hear it at the back. Sam, that I know you can hear as well. That's good. So, afternoon everybody. I suppose as I get started into this, that like all good story, you're going to have a narrator, and you probably want to trust your narrator. So I thought that I would explain a little bit about me and who I am and where I've come from and what I do, and then hopefully as we're going through all of this, that you will believe all of the stuff that I tell you. So I'm married, I've got no kids, I've got no pets, I do have an Xbox, which I'm not playing as much as I want to. My gamer tag is up there. If you want somebody who's really unreliable to go on some sort of quest with, I can be that guy. I try to go to music festivals as often as humanly possible. This is a bit of a fallow year this year, so I'm only going to Green Man, that's in August. But I do like to try and get out and about, go on holidays, do stuff. You know, no kids, no pets, you've got to fill your time with doing interesting things that you like. So, how did I sort of get into BI and data visualization? I started as an Oracle developer. So I was the PL SQL guy, building Oracle forms and latterly Oracle reports. I started really getting into that at Virgin Atlantic. I was really proud of the day when it was my code that give you your name and your points balance back when you logged in to their website for their loyalty program. And I sort of do shudder to think a little bit around the levels of fraud that would be pointed at me at this point when creating test accounts and test data like 20 years ago, it didn't, I mean it always mattered, but just sort of, you lose interest of making up test data, and then you end up putting your own postcode in and you get like Andy McAndy face at, you know, this address, and it's just a bit unnerving. But I moved on from an Oracle developer, I moved over to the business objects team. To build on my SQL skills because I really liked what they were doing. From that point really, I left being a sort of developer, more into BI reporting, left Virgin, went to Orange, continued to build my skills, left Orange because SAP poached me to go and do business objects with them, and from there I had 9 happy years. I gladly took voluntary redundancy as part of a bit of a workforce reduction, which was amazing timing because I managed to get a job at Nationwide just so that those two events would coalesce, which was just fantastic for me. At Nationwide, I lead the BI data visualization solutions team, so it's my team's role to build things that are sustaining. So we don't necessarily do point pieces of insight. We will look to build solutions that will sustain for a period of time, that will continue to give insight to those that need it the most time and again. Right, so the things that we're going to cover today are who are Nationwide, what we're trying to do. We've got a bit about our strategy and our plan that we're delivering. We've got some foundational stuff that we've done as we've gone along the way. We are really the delivering tangible benefit is really some of the things that my team have built, and just to give you some of the ideas that might help you when you're doing some stuff. The last one really is around how we're sort of really focusing much more than we ever really used to. I mean, it really highlights how the role is sort of changing as a sort of data visualization leader into educating people, building advocacy for what you're giving them, making sure they understand what they're looking at through enablement and engagement and literacy, and sort of how we're sort of continuing to shift into the future. Cool. So, Nationwide, 135 years old, started as Midland Co-op. We're a mutual. Everybody know what a mutual is? Yes? No? I will explain what a mutual is. So we are member owned. So if you have a Nationwide product, mortgage, current account, savings account, you are a member of Nationwide. One member, one vote. There's no shareholders, and it's a building society, so it has a social purpose. So as an example, you might have seen in the news, last year Nationwide are trialling to build houses in Swindon. Not to make money from it, but just to see if they can design a template that says, actually, housing is a real problem in the UK. Can we find a way to do that uses local builders and local resources to then run that and for the benefit of those areas to rather see people price out the market? Nobody else is really looking at that. Everyone, I mean, we still say your mortgage, but it's something a bit different. Nationwide is also systemically important to the UK. So we are, I think, the biggest current account switchers. You know, you do like your 7-day switching from one place to the next. You're probably doing it with us. We're also, I think, the second largest mortgage lender in the UK. So there's a lot of money flowing through Nationwide's books. We only operate in the UK, got about 17,000 employees, and the products that we offer are up on the screen. But we're also starting to find that we're needing to diversify a little bit more into other areas because, well, we just need more diversification because it's getting harder and harder to maintain a reasonable amount of profit based on just mortgages and savings books. So, as an example, after the last financial crash, Nationwide was recently awarded, we bid for and we won 50 million quid's worth of investment that was carved out of RBS being taken public, which now means that Nationwide will enter the small and medium business banking market. So that, you know, we probably get about 100,000 requests a year for people to say, do you do business banking? And we say, no, we don't, and then we just put those to one side, except we're going to stop doing that and we're going to start offering business banking, which is something new. And the whole aim, I suppose, is around the membership. It's not just the volume of membership, it has to be attached to value. So in the nicest possible way, current accounts are great, they offer lots of volume of membership, but unless your savings and mortgages are also with us, then it's quite a transactional activity, having a bank card, seeing money flow into your current account, to watch it almost flow straight back out again, doesn't really mean that you haven't really got a very strong relationship with us. So what we want to try and do is offer you services that you really want, and then you'll tend to stay with us, as people often do nationwide. And I think telling stories has been something that Nationwide has also really picked up on in the last couple of years, certainly since we got a new Chief Marketing Officer. Hands up if you've seen the Nationwide poem adverts on TV. Quite a few people. Hands up if you sort of see the Nationwide poem adverts on the TV. Also quite a few people. But they have an impact and they do tell stories. They get into your head because they do something different than all of the other TV adverts that are on right now. So, moving on. So, what are we doing at Nationwide? We have our sort of company goals are aligned to strategic cornerstones. They are the Nationwide logo there with the cornerstones, National Treasure, Thriving Membership, all the others. And really, they're really designed to sort of try and elicit different ways of thinking. Each one has specific treasures. So, for example, Built to Last is really about resilience. Resilience as an organisation, not just IT resilience, but resilience in people and process. And things like Building Legendary Service is about Nationwide really leveraging, not just building things like an online system or a mobile app, because we've got 650 branches and people really like to go into a branch to talk to human beings sometimes. So how do we get that real good blend of sort of Nationwide secret sauce, which is its people, plus the experience that you want, which is digital. So we're trying to sort of leverage all of these different things. Now, written in this big, big document, is really that data underpins all of this ambition. Without doing data better, we won't do any of the stuff that's on there. We won't offer fantastic service, we won't build better membership, we won't be resilient unless we get much, much better at how we're treating our data, which is sort of where this story starts to pick up a little bit. I would say where we are at the moment, or have been, or where we're moving from, is constrained, quite top-down, quite very, very report-centric. We've got, my boss has got a really good way of describing human middleware, which is designed to processes, discover that there's a gap between them, and what we tend to do is just pour people into that space, and then they'll do some manual stuff. I think someone earlier on said lots of manual spreadsheets and things are being created and moved about. That sounds very familiar. But we had lots of committee-based decision-making, and we are trying to unwind it's a lot of legacy, it's a lot of history. Nationwide is being squeezed, I suppose, as one example, by big banks who've got lots of cash behind them, but also by fintechs who don't have 135 years worth of legacy and are really fast and nimble and can just do things right from today, whereas we're, like lots of you out there, are trying to unpick the legacy of your organisation's decisions. So, We've got lots of silos, all of the usual stuff. It sounds pretty bleak. I don't believe it's that different from lots of other organisations. In fact, I know that's true. We're trying to transform culture as much as anything with the visualisations. We're trying to get people to really, instead of trying to use the data to validate what they believed in their gut was the right answer anyway, so why did I need that? And it's more about challenging what they think is right using the data visualisation and not using their gut. So I remember going to another session like this, and there's a really great speaker, only because I really like Star Wars stuff. And he worked at Forbidden Planet, the comic book store. And they came up with this whole thing of around being a Jedi Knight, and are you using the Force or are you using the data to validate your business decisions? Because quite often it just looks like people go, I know what the answer is, and I don't actually need to visualise or do anything with that data to I know the answer because I do. So, let's move on. So, what did we do? That all sounded horrific. So we came up with a plan. We've got this handsome chap up there who's my boss's boss. His name is Lee. He's our CDO now. Lee's not a data guy. He's not like us. He's an accountant. Or he was. Now he is a data guy. He's a CDO. He's been at Nationwide for a good long time, so he knows how the organisation works. Somebody good who can pull all the levers and push the buttons of Nationwide. Alongside that, what we did was we created, there's a nice picture of our intranet, we created a whole new community. So at Nationwide we don't have divisions. That doesn't sound very societal, that sounds quite divisional. So we have a data analytics community, which was and it was given a mandate to go and do data properly this time. So what that did was, that really brought in, I came in from a business intelligence competency centre. It brought in people from IT who were doing the warehousing. It brought in the IT architects, the testers, the business analysts. It brought in all of the different facets. If you're doing some sort of data at Nationwide, we try to bring it together. The purpose being to try and break down some of the politics that just exists within any organisation, and it's that tension between this group of people thinks something should be done in one way, and this group of people disagree with that, and then they'll just have a sort of silent war that will often go on. And it's starting to work, I'll be honest. Bringing everyone together, it does not make it easy, because doing what we do is hard, but it's easier. So we've got a leader. We've got a group of people working with a common purpose. We then came up with a strategy. So our data analytics strategy it's got some key things in there. It's got we've got to do some regulatory stuff like BCBS and GDPR. We have to do some sort of centralised work like create a member database. So don't have pockets of the organisation trying to create their own pictures of a member. Just do that once and let everybody use that. We also need to unwind some of that legacy I talked about. So the strategy talks about replacement of legacy and simplification. And it also spun up an analytics team. By that I mean data science, doing things in R and Python, generally the smartest people in the room type stuff. So they got their own little club to go and be in. And we all started to work much more with a single purpose together, as opposed to lots of people doing good, valuable stuff, but not particularly coordinated. So it started to come together. But the real thing then is trying to then drive out with this purpose of underlying it all to change culture, to get more value from our data, because we've got lots of data, we just don't surface it very well, or we don't believe what we've got because it's all in different pockets and it's in different silos. So one of the first things we did, now we had a plan, was we started to work on our foundations, because we couldn't just dive straight into building stuff. Well, I mean, we did a little bit, but we have a longer term plan. The picture on the screen is sort of to do with foundations. It was the original blueprint document we came up with when we designed our new end-to-end data architecture for Nationwide. I can tell you as a fact, it doesn't really look like that today, but I thought that was worth sharing. The bit where I really play in the space is the purple box on your right of the screen, the data consumption, end user tools as they're fashionably known. So that's one element. So we did come up with this whole technical piece. We spent a lot of time, and we're spending a lot of time working on people, growing our head count. My team particularly, I used to lead a team of 6, and now, I'm not joking, it's about 26. So we've really, as part of our operating model, factored in that actually we need to increase our numbers if we're going to tackle some of these big topics at a societal level, as opposed to just working with 2 people with a department. How can we start to build things at scale, which means that we get that economy of scale and people start to find reuse of the data that we're building things with. So we're hiring people, hiring new people with the skills that we need, because, for example, we didn't used to have Hadoop, and now we do. Or we didn't used to have Teradata, and now we do. We've obviously been upskilling the people that we've got, but bringing new people in, it's around cultural fit as well. It's around, we know what we need to do, but we want it done in the right way, in a sort of nationwide way, I suppose, is a way to describe it. We don't really want to leave a trail of bodies in our wake whilst we build out the best visualisation that anybody's ever seen. We've moved forward with Agile to just try and bring those people together. We've improved our business partnering so that we spend less time, I suppose, gathering requirements and more time just sitting with the business users to build that knowledge, to understand what it is they want and have a continuous conversation, as opposed to a sort of a "I'll take your order now, please" approach to delivering change. And we've got a lot better at shaping what we need around prioritisation. So our process and lots of things is working. From a technology perspective, like I say, we re-architected end-to-end. I helped write, with my boss, what's called the Business Intelligence Tool Strategy. So one of the things around the technology, there are quite a few things on that right-hand side. You've got Click, you've got a bit of Teradata, Aster, you've got bits of SAS, you've got business objects. That's not what we have today. So what we did was we wrote out a tool strategy that really didn't look at things from a technology perspective to begin with. It looks at things from a persona and use case. So we have a phenomenal amount of hindsight type reporting. What's going on in the rear view mirror? What did I sell last week, last month, last year? With no real context to that. So it's not really guiding where you need to go. It's just telling you where you've been. And so we tried to transform that, but pick the right technology. And we've zeroed in on a couple of things. But that's been really helpful, not because we don't want people to use different tooling, but what we're trying to manage, I suppose, with this tool strategy is to stop people wasting effort in the nicest possible way, having conversations with Tableau, Power BI, Click, SAP, and anybody else who's doing data visualization tooling, because we've zeroed in on a couple of products and they are good enough. Now we can find nuances in all of those tooling that will be better at some things than others, but we're only in the margins at this point, and it's only incremental gain, and we don't really need to be in that space right now. So, some of the things that I had that worked for me when I spent the best part of at least 6 months trying to convince that if we're going to do all of this stuff at scale, then we need to scale up our tooling. So previously we had some business objects, we had, I don't know, a couple of hundred ClickView licenses, but you're not really going to nail it with when you're sort of scrimping on some of the tooling if you really want to go after some big wins. So to get that visualization out where it needs to be, which is out to the corners of the business, out to those that need it the most, I spent a fair bit of time building the business case. So what I did was, the project team were busy running small project wins. We basically said yes to everything for over 12 months, which wasn't that fun, but it had a bonus of getting you out there and getting your name out there as a team who can add value, get some things done, solve business problems. Don't try and boil the ocean, because that is difficult, but it really made a difference to us, because it meant that we could talk to people and it sparked their thinking. It got them thinking about, well, this was good, imagine if we could do this with it or do that with it. And I would write down all of those possible opportunities and go, okay, if we went that big, how many licenses will we need? And I started to put that make a note of that and toss up the totals. Obviously, as we had the tooling strategy, we can then go after our old tooling and sort of find an efficiency and say, why pay for 2 when we can just pay for 1? So that was the next piece, to say, let's just stop running as much as possible. Let's just run one thing and run it well. And also, we started to look at other use cases outside. So we've forever been in contact with people going, oh, here's, I've got all these financial services use cases and things like that. And you would sort of say, okay, but we've got loads of accountants and we've been doing financial services for 130 years. We sort of know financial services. But we then started to look at, well, we've got 650 branches. So we're into retail, really. So we started to look outside of financial services for ideas of where we could input to again, bolster up where should we go after. The other big thing we went after was stakeholders. I didn't arrange it, but I was very fortunate. The CDO wanted to know what was going on. So we had monthly showcases with him, which, with hindsight, if they hadn't been in place, we would have needed to arrange them. So that's sort of true, I suppose, get the people, get some high-level sponsorship, get the exec involved, that is all true. And the sort of where we are today is sort of testament with these outcomes of what we've got. So the showcase allowed me an hour a month to chip away at the CDO going, here is something that looks really cool, it's better than the spreadsheets you've ever seen for the rest of your sort of working time. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do that at a much bigger scale? And just chipped away at it month after month after month, and eventually it worked. We used the vendors for some stuff. We just sort of said, look, if you want to sell us some stuff, you're going to have to do some stuff for us, which helps things. And we found ways to go and talk to the sort of the unconverted. I suppose we went to things like, with the CDO, we helped arrange Innovation Day, where we actually sent him off to Accenture with the rest of the exec, and all they did was have people talk to them about data for the day, which is just great. And we sent them off to Microsoft and all these things just to go and get embedded with some of these people who are going to sort of get them thinking in a different way. And we've had analytics steering meetings and things like that, where we, again, try and talk to people about the visualization around the use cases that they're coming up with. But ultimately where we've landed is we've got wall-to-wall click and we've got ThoughtSpot at Nationwide. So, quick show of hands. Who heard of ThoughtSpot? Yes? No? Not many. Right, this will be quite interesting then. So, it is an interesting tool, ThoughtSpot. It's an interesting proposition in that it's trying to do sort of data visualization in a different way than I've seen from some of the other software vendors. It's basically a search. It's, I don't know if this still uses tagline, but it's all about Google for Business. Everybody knows how to type some words about their business, and what they'd like is the answer served back to them. And what that does is, that really helps speed up that time to decision making, because to some extent, whilst I've been busy hiring about 20 people, there is not enough really great data viz BI developers in the Swindon area who I can hire fast enough that will keep pace with all the demands that exist within Nationwide. It's not physically possible. So ThoughtSpot will offer us something different in that it will sort of democratise in the nicest possible way, people being able to interact with that data. The machine will offer them visualizations, suggestions, and there's even a button that even if they don't know anything about that data, that they're asking questions of it, it will go away and just do the machine learning thing and give them some insight, both text-based and visual-based. So it offers a shortcut to some extent. Now, to make it work, you have to have good quality data. It has to be loaded into a warehouse. What it won't do is what I'll talk about in a minute around click, which is fast sort of time to market, as it were. But it might solve a big problem for us, which is if I've got high volumes of data and I just want everyone to, I can't possibly, all I can do really is get the team to design data sets based around groups of questions, sort of traditional sort of warehouse mart style approach to things, but then not worry about the interface. That will just take care of itself. One of the good examples that somebody gave me of that was actually, I think it was somebody said at BT, they found that their call centre people had been using it. They were going to open it up for customers to basically query their telephone bills, which is quite a good use case. Because you can just type in your telephone number and bang, it'll just give you an itemised bill. But what they found was the contact centre people were using this internal tool as well because it works so well. So that it starts to scream about it can take lots of volumes of data. Right. And there, if you haven't seen it before, is a picture of ThoughtSpot. At the top, you would just like, it comes pretty blank screen. Type in, I started typing yesterday, how many, and then here's some of the previous searches that came up. And I picked a Sankey because I thought it looked different. not related to the question. The other tool then that we're using, Click. What do you use that for? Things that up there, it's our go-to tool to try and sweep out all of the Microsoft analysis services, business objects, Excel, the usual stuff. It's good enough. We had a prior relationship with Click. We were using ClickView, but more at a departmental level. We sort of took that centrally so that we could really get good at doing it. You know, bring together those pockets of expertise into a central point, build more of a community around that tooling so that you could really just generate better solutions, get better at what we do. We've got a couple of environments, it's licensed per user at the moment. The way we use it today, which isn't very exciting because you can, like lots of these other tools, you can plug it into D3, into all these JavaScript libraries. We haven't done that yet, but that's not to say we won't do, but baby steps along the way. And as we're finding in a couple of these slides that are coming up, there's a bit of a journey to take your users on as well as just sort of giving them the most perfect visualization. But Click has a really good rep nationwide in terms of people talk about it, which is a good thing. That's not a particularly exciting slide, but it's a picture of Click Hub. But what I thought I would do now is talk to you about some of the solutions that we've built. So I'm going to give you a few examples of things that have really helped nationwide, I think, prove that we can do visualizations at scale, and some of the rationale behind why that works for us. So the first one is really about project delivery, which is quite a boring, dry subject, but you end up with project managers and PMO spending, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours a week doing a weekly status report. It's debating whether it's AMBO or the RAG status and the whole thing that goes around that. So there's a lot of effort gone into stuff that people don't really read, and they don't read them. What it also didn't do at Nationwide was it only talks about project status, it didn't talk about money. That was a separate conversation that happened somewhere else with a different group of people. What we really needed to do was bring all of that stuff together. So there's a story there about people really understanding how that project's performing to really get the best out of it. Now, we took a bit of a punt on the numbers, but that was worked out by the PMO. We're sort of partway through the year, so I haven't realised £1 million of benefit yet, but we're on the way. But it really is the first time now that we can have much more joined up conversations because we use the tooling to bring the data together, which is the same story that we've heard through all of the presentations. It's not about there's one data set and it's right. It's about there's lots of data sets, you need to spend all of the horrible time and effort to bring them all together, then discover that they don't all work together, and then make the best of it that you can do. So that's what we did. Now, one of the differentiators that we put in, so the thing on the left is just an example of part of the finance spend or something, but the screen on the right is that dependencies view. Now, they didn't really ask for that. Well, they sort of did, but they only mentioned it in conversation, but we took that and we thought, actually, that's a thread that we can build on to get them a bit more engaged. So what we've got plotted in the network diagram is really every project and the dependencies between different projects. So the one big hub in the middle, I think it's possibly a Windows Server upgrade. And you've got all these other projects around it that are dependent on that one delivering something for them to be successful, which is then a different conversation at a senior exec level or a project manager level, because some of those satellite projects now can no longer succeed without that one delivering. So it really gives you a different perspective of where should we put our time and effort into fixing some of the problems. Same then goes for budget funding. When inevitable questions around money and time come into the equation, you have a different view of the world now. You can see the whole of delivery working together. It was, I don't want to say it's a gimmick, but it served a purpose to change the conversation, to get people thinking about using their data differently. Next one up, member data quality. I like this one. We're not going to be winning, I know you've only just seen that first one. There's a running theme that we are not going to be winning awards at the moment, I don't think, for our visualization. It's more about function than form right now, but that's, we're okay with that. It's about this business value in everything we've done. We will get better at how we present that, and then it will give us more value. But the member data quality one is interesting. it turns out we're not very good at capturing data in a good form. And so what we've built is a dashboard that we're going to give to every branch manager, or it goes out in the next week, and give it all to the data stewards, who will see quality per customer, per sale, per branch. So we have something that's really, really actionable by a branch manager, because we'll reload the data every day, test to some fairly basic business rules, that will allow somebody in the branch to see the sale that we made yesterday, we didn't get all of the right data, and before the customer forgets, and we try and contact them in a month's time, and try and phone them or email them and say, hey, do you remember us when that time you opened the bank account, or whatever it is, and that people think they're now being part of a phishing attack, you might stand a chance to get that data right if you contact them the next day. So we built the data quality dashboard. Now we've got a map on there. Not really that, again, that it adds particular value to this, because it absolutely doesn't. And we debated it, actually, whether we should include it. And in the end, we compromised and we put it on a tab. But the reason we kept it in there was, again, to spark conversation. We almost want to try and gamify and get some competition going between branches. We've had quite a lot of, I suppose in the past, concern that people would see data they weren't allowed to see. And that is true, you need to manage the risk, but there's also something about people understanding where they are in the context of their peer group, which is really powerful. So what we can see is really poor data quality, as we're currently, and this is not a joke, hypothesising, and somebody's working this out, everywhere where there's strong regional accents, but I don't know how Wales gets away with this, there is apparently not great data quality. From Newcastle and North Yorkshire, from Liverpool and down through the Midlands and into London. So make of that what you will. Someone's actually trying to prove and disprove that now through another test. But another way to really then engage with the users. So there's other parts of this dashboard that really go down to that member level. And much like that's really sort of powerful for us. I've got something. This summary screen will be great for an area director or somebody who's sort of supporting the branch hierarchy, as it were. But there's other screens where the branch manager will go down and see transactional level stuff and which rule failed and sort of why did it fail, gives them a bit more insight. They can go and do something about it. And that's really important for something like Nationwide. When we then wind backwards to the goals we talked about, and we talked about thriving membership and good service, if we didn't catch your telephone number or email address, in about 12 months, we will definitely give you bad service. So within financial services industry, there's something called strong customer authentications coming in soon. And basically, based on your financial services provider's fraud risk rate, you might be in the shops and you will be challenged with a one-time PIN before your purchase will be authorised if they suspect it's fraud. Now, you won't be very happy with your financial services provider if you're in the queue of a supermarket on a Friday and it won't take your card and your financial service provider didn't have your telephone number so they can text you that one-time PIN. You're going to move banks the next day and they won't make that mistake. So there's something really interesting about that. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Is the data quality a branch level issue or is it a systems design issue?
Systems design. This is, don't get me wrong, the horse bolted and has run off laughing at this point and the gate is miles away. This is not a good solution to what is a data capture problem. But this is a solution that offers value back to Nationwide. In parallel to this, front-end data capture systems are being updated, but until such point, this needs to exist. So from a business perspective, we shouldn't have built it, but it's a sticking plaster over a wound. Cool. But it gets click into every branch, which is great. So that'll be one of different things that we'll start to put in there. We've got things that we're going to then start to share with the branch around committed membership, that thing I talked about earlier about how we got really strong bonds with our customers. Next one up, stress testing. This was the one that cracked finance, or is cracking finance, probably fair to say. They had a lot of data. I've probably not put enough data sources up there, they have more than that. But we've got lots of pockets of teams. There was a centralised stress testing team, which every year financial services organisations of certain size get asked to submit the results of a stress test. They will be, challenged with what would happen if house prices collapsed by 25%, employment went up by 5%, and interest rates did something crazy. What would that do to your organisation? And every year we have to respond. Where this really helped the finance team was speed, absolute speed for the analysts. They went from having something like 25 measures which had about 80 triggers against those measures to sort of test tolerances based on the outcomes of stress. It would take them days to get to points where they could then write a plan, having done the analysis. They do this in minutes now. They can turn stuff around within the day. It used to take them days, if not weeks. We had another example where once we built the first iteration of the stress testing app, that it used to take them about 4 days before they could sit down and start to pour through the different scenarios that were being posed by the EBA, the Bank of England. The story that got the team to the annual awards was that on the first morning of the first day of being submitted the stress test results, the CFO was sat down with the team going, and this is what we've got to do. It just changes the conversation completely. Because when we then start to visualise it, it's not in Excel spreadsheets, though I've only got the really boring sanitised ones because it's the finance guys. It just changes the conversation. Because they've got that interactivity, it allows them to do the thing that everybody does, which is that's interesting, but what about? And then they ask the second question, and then they're off and running. Does it do this? How does that look? And they're able to start to explore and walk through the data rather than here is an answer. And then if you want some follow-up, I've got to go and do some other work. All these solutions are built to some extent in mind of trying to understand what's most critical to those users, what's most important. Let's design with that first. But to sort of build out a solution, let's let them explore the data, and then also let's give them the training, which I'll talk about in a minute. Let's give them the training so they can go off and start to build things on their own as well, but from a safe place. Right. The last one I'm going to show in terms of examples is travel and expenses. Sound pretty basic. It's really an easy and emotive topic though for everybody to know how much they're actually spending on travel. And something that then we could do at scale, which hadn't really been done before or was difficult to do, was share the cost spend of travel with every cost centre manager. Sounds fairly obvious. But it was a very one-sided conversation because the finance business partners would have that information, but you weren't really able to then produce off, 200 copies of a report for each of their responsible areas to what the spend had been. But we can do that now, and not only that, those cost centre owners can start to explore the data themselves and start to understand what's going on. As well as we started to build it out a little bit, so we looked for different things that we could do. For example, the CO2 we got from the fleet management and the fleet management company, because we have fuel cards for some people at Nationwide. So that gives us a different perspective again on that same data set. And now we can start to really look at travel from a sort of an end-to-end perspective, and we can start to build rules into the data visualization that won't exist anywhere else in society, which is sort of quite an interesting perspective. So one might be a rule around who's hiring cars but is also claiming a car allowance. So it might be okay, but it might be a question that you want to go and ask. But it's using that data to do something different. Now, one of the biggest things that we've put in place is almost, I don't want to say competition or gamifying, but it's trying to get people to understand, change their behaviour using the visualisation. So now we can show them their performance, we can try and challenge them to change their performance. So we can try and get them to have about a 10% reduction in travel will elicit £1 million. Doesn't look fantastic, but it also got some interesting stuff. If we've got security rules around who can see what, but even a simple scatter by number of trips and cost, we can start to see the outliers, and people will get curious really quick and go, I don't want to be the outlier. And it will be sanitised with the execs and people like that taken off, I suspect. But it does something different. Like I said, we haven't really cracked on a theme and templates and stuff. We're slowly getting there. And I'll be honest, as part of my team's role is changing from people who would take orders as report developers to people who need to be something different. They need to start to understand the business a bit more. So, where are we going? What are we doing? There's been I would say the role is changing around the visualisation. Visualisation is important, but there are some key things that go with it that will make the visualisation successful or not. And someone else touched on that as well, around sort of chucking things out there and then just going, well, it was the best it could be. For example, a business glossary. put the explanation of what the data is, where the data is. So put a glossary in the thing somewhere, because people do not understand what they're looking at. They think they do, but quite often they won't do. Another one that's been quite successful for us at Nationwide is something called explainer videos. So topics like, fairly dry, GDPR or maybe BCBS, get somebody who's an expert in that field to do a 2-minute video and put that on the intranet so that people, and broadcast about it, so that you try and make data part of the conversation, so that they'll start to understand a little bit more about what's going on, be a bit more curious about what they're looking at, feel like they're a bit more confident about looking at data. One of the things that we're struggling, I would say, is the real users to explain how something works. So struggling on the basis that using Adobe video recording software isn't always easiest. But the intention is to have somebody, like a cost centre manager or a branch manager, record a 2-minute video and put that inside of the visualisation somewhere, so that they can explain why the thing is improving their business process. Not a thing that the data analytics community created and foisted on somebody, but a thing that somebody's going, this is how this works and this is what it will do for me in my day, which will be massive advocacy, which I struggle to say sometimes. Lunch and learn, put the obvious one, talk about business areas, talk about data, talk about software, it doesn't matter, get people talking about the topic. Training, we put training, we used to not put training on the training portal, we used to put training where we had access to, and it sounds like an obvious thing, but we had conversations where we had to then go and get training put where people would go be able to find it. And training is multiple pathways for developers who want to bring their own data, build their own visualizations. Training is for people who just need to know how to filter, drill, make some selections, build out their own stories. Or it can be for people in the middle who we want to give them a sort of a walled playground to play in, which is use the data that we've used to build the things, you build your own things from that basis. You're going to struggle, you're going to have to work quite hard to get the numbers wrong at that point, because we've got a data set for you to work with. And with the execs as well, keep the conversation going, board IT advisors involved in updating our strategy. I've already talked about away days, keep them engaged on the topic of analytics, just anything we can do to try and keep the conversation going. And the visualizations of that data are really important because it's the thing that people can come back to. So I think lastly for me, where are we going? So our capability, at the moment, we need to shift where we are. We need to move, I don't want to say we're order takers, but we'll build better solutions. We'll become more like analysts if we act more like analysts. So designing things more with a business perspective in mind at 70% will mean that you only need about 30% of your technical ability to solve the problem. You don't need to be the other way around and go, I'm super clever technically, but I didn't ask the right questions. Get the right questions asked. Again, building up solutions will get better when we continue to do Agile and Scrum, get the technical people, the SMEs, get them embedded together, get them working together. Somebody touched, I think, on the first session about it's a blend of skills. So let's really harness that, because the sort of people coming from my capability who are sort of got a more technical background, as soon as they start to understand the business context and what the business is trying to do, their ability to be logical and think through problems will pay dividends, because they'll want to try and find solutions to things. A big focus for us, and we've touched on this already, was the UI and UX. So not only do we need to, and we've got a few, I didn't really pick up some of the best examples, but picking up on things that look more professional, I suppose is one way to describe it, or have a consistency to them, so that when people open things up, they know they've been built by the data analytics team, IT. As well as, how can we start to blur the lines between where people are working on a business process and where people are consuming their data visualization. So by that I mean, if I've got customers who are trying to buy a new product, so we've got our sales system, then why not embed part of Click or whatever, the data visualization inside of that system alongside it, because there'll be a lot of rich data that we will know about that customer if we're trying to sell them something new that only exists in the warehouse, that doesn't exist in the sales system. Why not blur the lines so they get really used to reading and using the data that's sort of downstream from where they currently work. Let's close that back together again. We need to build out our sort of graphics design type approach as well. Last thing, literacy and enablement. We've been taking a closer look. There's the dataliteracy.org is really interesting. They've got persona-based training that really helps sort of build the different types of roles that will exist in our organisations and how you can get them engaged in using data and visualisation, things like that. That's a pretty good one. The last thing around the enablement is, for all of the stuff that we've shown, if nobody uses it, what was the point in building it? So we're sort of looking at a role that I suppose is marketing as much as anything. So instead of us delivering projects and pushing them out there like good fashioned, old-fashioned, well, not old-fashioned, but traditional sort of IT lent on, you asked us to do some stuff, we did some stuff, and here it goes. Why not launch things like you were launching a new iPhone or something like that? Build some buzz about it, get something going about it. On the day it launches, have people visible, take their feedback seriously, make it easy to give feedback and act on feedback. So how can you really build up the advocacy and your stickiness of users to the solutions that you've spent a long time designing and building is really almost like a marketing activity, not a traditional data visualization person type activity. But it all needs to work together somewhere along the way. I think that is it. So I was going to ask you if you had any questions as we went through, but any questions? Right.
Are you wanting to be a profit centre?
In what sense?
Well, in businesses, the IT function is traditionally a cost centre, a cost to the business, and the business pays for you. But the way you're talking there, it's almost like you're saying you want to be proactive, which implies
Yes.
you've got to have some funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so we don't. Yes. So as an example, in the majority, for a lot of those examples, my team didn't charge for their time to do that work. So that was done on the basis that they are the right things to do, because how can you, as travel and expense is a good example, how can you manage that as a cost if nobody builds that solution? But then you have the whole debate of, can somebody write a business case to win the project funding to get the work done? This is like a no-brainer, right? You just sort of go, we need that done, okay, let's get that done. So we've got a sunk cost basically into OPEX, so that's really where we sit heavily. But then the things that we build have to have a payback. So we do have to have a bit of a challenge of, well, that sounds like an interesting problem, but is it really going to give us anything back that's of great value to Nationwide? So we don't necessarily have to turn a profit, but we have to show that somebody somewhere is claiming some benefit. So has somebody found some new insight that's led to some great new thing, or have we made and simplified a process where we take our data from, or how people are interacting with that data, that we can say, loosely, chalk that up as a win somewhere. There's an efficiency in it, all of it.
Luxury.
Luxury. But it's a different, and this goes back to this societal thing. We don't need to work like, no one's chasing us in Q4 to, you're not going to get there, right? So no travel and all that. Those rules don't apply for Nationwide. It becomes a 2 or a 3. Don't get me wrong. There's a whole financial framework around, cost management and profit and all this sort of stuff. But it's a different way of operating to go, there are some things that are just right to do, so let's do those and do them right.
Any more questions, Randy?
You mentioned in the beginning of your presentation that you were considering having business accounts as well.
Yeah.
Is that right? So would you still be a mutual? So would they become members?
That is a good question. There is a debate at the moment that went from no to yes, and I don't know where we've landed. So the original question was, if you didn't hear, was if you open a Nationwide business bank account, January 2020, for you contractors in the room, does that qualify you as a member of Nationwide? And originally we were saying no. Then the conversation was had and it was yes. And then if I'm being honest, standing here, I don't know where we've landed. So maybe is the answer.
Okay. I mean, maybe I was going to ask, especially if it was yes, then we talked about having a central database for all of the members. So would that be then part of the central database? Would you have something different? Would you feel?
Good question. So in that respect, we've been looking at, because it's a new business, it's been set up like a startup. So as an example, you will be able to use, cloud-based APIs to validate your, company's house. You are who you say you are in terms of recognition. So you'll be able to do all this stuff online. Is what you want to do. But will you be able to? And it was will the data exist within Nationwide? Possibly not, because we don't necessarily want to some extent. We'd be quite a big, heavy anchor to what would be quite a small and nimble organisation. So we've got some regulatory stuff because it all falls under Nationwide. But loosely coupled, I think, is the phrase that we're using right now.
Okay, so interesting journey on analytics. Could you say something about how you worked with, how all that world sort of sat with all the enabling data management disciplines like managing the metadata, mastering the data, the governance?
So as they are, as part of so I'm in the BI and data viz team. There is a data marketplace and governance team who sit alongside from us. They are responsible for policy, metadata management, master data management, data stewardship, all of that umbrella of topic is their bag. And we have interest in, I need them to do their job, so my job works well. That whole topic of data quality is like they can try and help fix that. Whereas I'm a bit more, what's the right word, pragmatic, in terms of we'll take the data that we have because there will be some value in it around, you have to understand the quality of it to some extent, but then you can only work with what you've got. I get you need to test that to some extent to work out whether it's even worth using it.
But you know, on your roadmap, somewhere in
Yep.
your journey,
Yep.
did you ever come to the point where you said, okay, in order to be able to do this, we need to sort out some...
That's all happening. So I've only talked about... That is all. There is a whole other 50 minutes of presentation by somebody else from Nationwide who will speak eloquently on data management, data governance, what they're doing with metadata management, master data management, business glossary, the whole managing that data piece. That's not my area of specialty.
Well, it's happening. That is
Oh,
the
absolutely,
key.
absolutely.
Okay.
As is, I'm trying to think what else we're doing. You know, much better architecture. You know, standard design patterns for how to ingest data. Policy around how do we, you know, we're quite an on-premise organisation, so what's our policy on cloud? Where can data live? Am I allowed to build visualizations in the cloud? You know, all of these things are happening. It's all happening in parallel. I guess I've shared one story of what's happening within Nationwide, but there's
Exactly, because what often happens is that you're trying to do this, and then you find that you need, you know, you're lacking all those foundation stones within the organization, and you know, and it suddenly becomes a much larger conversation, and often becomes difficult at that point.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, it's not easy. I think what we're finding is, like I said, the point of creating that whole community was to try and bring some of those people together, to take some of the frictions away, as opposed to trying to act against each other, try and act collectively, so that we, as an example, now I'm much closer to the data governance team. I can have much easier to have a conversation, though it was always easy to have a conversation around, hey, have you got the master list of branches, or where in the organisation is the golden source of something that I should be building my solutions on, as opposed to somebody passing me a spreadsheet and going, this is the list of branches, and then we find that it's not maintained and things like that. That's all still happening, and we do have those conversations as part of the solution build. Is, does this feel right? Is this the good place to get data from? Any more? Oh, yep.
The upscaling of your team,
Yeah.
do you see that as a long-term investment, or is that a short-term automate, build, prove it, scale it back,
We have
reinvest it? Where do you see it going?
long term. It's an interesting. I think. Let me do this. It's like painting the fourth bridge, right? By the time we've gone through this bit of transformation that's got however many years left to go on it, we're either going to have to correct the mistakes in the future of the ones that we're making right now, or the team will, you know, the operating model will change. Building a central hub that has light spokes will flip on its head, and the power will be given to spokes, and the team will disperse, and the hub will become the thing that just manages governance and best practice, and all of the real work gets done closer to the business. I think we've tried to build our capability for the longer term. To some extent, we had a model at some point last year. We had probably 50-50 mix of perm and contractors, but when we looked at that and plotted a roadmap of work to be done, and you can go past 2 years without really working that hard, you sort of go, well, running with 50% of contractors, isn't that efficient? Because I'm just gonna, you know, I don't need them, and I've got that thing which is, I'm not retaining the business knowledge within the business. I've just got people just cranking the handle and getting some stuff done. We're going to lose something if we lose the people. So we took a choice to sort of grow the team, grow it permanently, keep that knowledge internally. I think was the big thing for us.
Right, thank you very much, Andy.
Cheers.
Last item on the agenda for today